video, I'm going to be teaching you how to maximize your profits and earn rates in the War Thunder Mad Thunder special April Fool's event. So, first thing I recommend doing for this event before getting any of these strategies out of the way is to maximize and upgrade all of your original base vehicles. Now, to do this, the easiest thing to do is to use your boar to farm lots of resources at the beginning of the match, and then to quickly exfil with that one and leave the zone with a bunch of resources. Once you've gathered enough resources, the first vehicle I'd recommend trying to go for would be the Strong Boar, as it's going to be the most useful for what we're planning to do here in this event. So, after doing that, I'd recommend doing the Porcupine, getting the Flamethrowers, as this Flamethrower can allow you to get the jump on people in the sandstorms, and just completely obliterate somebody with a Flamethrower is quite fun and satisfying, but it's not the most reliable weapon. Thankfully, they did an update to where the gun has been reworked on this event vehicle, the Porcupine, so it's more accurate and you can quickly dispatch enemies a little bit faster. Now, as far as upgrading the Echidna, I do not recommend this unless you're trying to go for these little stickers, because the Echidna's armored variant is not much different from the base variant. It actually removes storage capacity, which is something you don't want in the early game. So while armored variants of these vehicles may be, tempting to use, I recommend attempting to use these original vehicles as it can be more useful in the long term of maximizing your profits. So you'll want to just completely do this strategy over and over again to farm all of your resources spawning in your boar first, harvesting the resources. Then I would recommend using the Porcupine, as it's a pretty quick vehicle, and then using the Echidna as like a cleanup crew where you can pick off some people at the end, get some kills, and collect some rage at the end of the match. Now, once you've collected enough resources, you can head down and unlock these vehicles. Now, I would not recommend upgrading any of these vehicles fully until you fully unlocked your way down to the Mule. The Mule is going to be the most useful vehicle for what we want to do in our strategy. And the strategy is of course going to be prioritizing certain resources. The best resource to prioritize once you get the Mule would be armor. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but majority of the vehicles rely a lot on armor, and armor is going to be the blue resource, which is going to be the most valuable resource for you in the later stage when unlocking a lot of stuff. Now, obviously, rage is very important too, and I know what you're wondering. How do I collect rage if I'm, struggling to find them in my team battles or whatnot? If you're confident in your ability to kill enemies very quickly, what I would recommend for farming rage is to go into a free-for-all mode, but I would not recommend to do this until, again, you have upgraded all of the base vehicles, as this will help you maximize your damage output, which will in turn allow you to collect more rage throughout the match. So with the free-for-all mode, the reason why I recommend this is I think it's self-explanatory, but you're fighting multiple people rather than just a team of enemies. So because of this, it allows you to get more kills easily and run into more fights. But what I wouldn't recommend is do not prioritize resources. Do not prioritize anything else besides getting kills in this game mode. And the only time you should try to exfil is once you get maximum rage, which is 5 tokens, which I recommend going to an exfil site once you have 4 tokens, because there are spawns nearby all the exfil sites, so no matter where you exfil, on your way to the exfil site in free-for-all, you're most likely going to come across another person, and the last thing you want to do is have that person sit there in camp and wait for you to go towards that exfil site because you have max rage and they can see you on the map. So what I would instead recommend trying to do is once you find yourself with 4 stripes on your flag, to quickly start finding your way to your exfil site and hopefully get a kill along the way there, so that right when you get maximum rage, you can quickly leave the zone where nobody's able to take that. So you'll do that again for all 3 spawns. If you do it for your 3 starter vehicles, and let's say you get max rage, you can then get an output of 18 rage tokens. Now you can get way more than 18 rage tokens a match if you have other vehicles and you're willing to sacrifice gamble some rage tokens to get some more, right? So obviously it'll cost a rage token to use one of these rage token vehicles. The rage token vehicles being the Rhino, Armadillo, and the Lizard. The one I would recommend to use early on, unless you have the Rhino fully upgraded, would be the Lizard or the Reptile, as the Reptile is very efficient in terms of just being stock, right? It has a 35mm autocannon. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's either 30 or 35. And it just dispatches enemies fairly quickly, as long as you prioritize where enemies are in the crew. So Armadillo, I would recommend avoiding this vehicle. I have not tested out the fully upgraded variant, but I'm assuming it has the same problems as all of the others, unless they just miraculously added crew members. But the crew members all three are going to be located up in the frontal area of it because it is a BTR-80. And because of this, it's very easy to dispatch or immobilize this vehicle so that you can kill it efficiently. So whenever engaging an Armadillo, make sure to just shoot the front area because that is going to be your best chances of taking it out very quickly. And now because of this, it's not the best vehicle that I would recommend you use or waste a rage token on, as I just don't see it being worth it. Sure, the Armadillo is very cool, right? It's a cool vehicle. It has some pros like not having to reload, but you do run out of ammunition fairly quickly because it has such a high fire rate. And again, there's no magazines to reload, so that tends to be a problem when farming rage. I usually find myself getting 3 or 4 tokens and then running out of ammunition, meaning I can't maximize my rage. Nor, if I'm exfilling, do I have ammo usually to defend myself unless I plan ahead and say, hey, I can only kill like 2 or 3 vehicles, and then I need to save some ammunition to exfil. Which is something you don't want to do when using a rage token on something, meaning you're only gaining a possible, 2 to 3 rage tokens with that spawn, when you could have gained 4. So again, it's just, I know this sounds picky, right? And like, oh, why matter for about 1 rage token? Well, this game mode is all about maximizing your output. So for example, once you get the mule, if you're prioritizing metal, and I'll show you in here in one of the spawns, we'll hop into a battle and I'll show you what I mean. If it'll let me take part in a battle. There we go. So, if you want to maximize your output, the best thing to do is to prioritize resources. Once you get the mule, the one I again recommend prioritizing would be the armor, as it's going to be the most valuable resource in this event. Now you can go for vehicle upgrades like the loot scanner, the rage scanner, which, speaking of which, the rage scanner, if you are not confident in your ability to kill enemies, where I would recommend just, using the rage scanner to find rage along maps and team battles on dead bodies to farm easily, right? It reveals rage for a second, and you can use this later in the match. We did not spawn in our ultimate variant, but that's okay. So as you can see, we spawned at the top spawn here, and I know what you're wondering, why do that? Let's say I want metal. So this is actually a really good spawn if you want metal. I spawned up at the top though, so that you see how my exfil site is on that side of the map as well. So we're gonna go down here. We're just gonna gather one little resource thing or something, and then we'll exfil. But it's best to pick the opposite spawn of what you want in most cases, because this side of the map, I'd say this side that we're heading to now, the bottom of the map, is going to be a lot more effective for when it comes to farming resources, just because there's a bit of a cheese spot, unlike the other side of the map, where you can kind of get away with gathering resources and then just exfil fairly quickly. So I don't think, yeah, there's some metal. We don't really need any, but for example, this zone will allow us to maximize our profits. I've had exfils where I've exfilled with 100 metal with the mule, and then I've gone back in my bore and exfilled with an additional 50, and then a small vehicle. So you can in theory, if you have really good games, for the most part, you can get 175 resources or metal from each match that you play, as well as an additional amount of rage. And if you're doing that every 20 minutes, then you can get over like 400 metal an hour. So That's obviously going to be a boatload, and you'd be able to fully upgrade your mule in just an hour of playing with this strategy. So I highly recommend grinding out the mule. That's why I keep reiterating, grind the mule first, and do not unlock anything until you unlock the mule, except for the base vehicle upgrades, because the mule is going to be the most beneficial for maximizing your profits. So obviously, my favorite route here to take on this side of the map is going to be this little cheese spot here along the border wall of the map. So our exfil site is pretty far from here, where it seems like a big open desert, barren wasteland, right? And this is probably not the most safe thing to be doing, but there's this little cheese spot that, sure, it says like out of, you know, leaving the arena and all that stuff because of the spawn protection, but once we get past that, you can then cheese it and come right over this berm, and it will say return to battlefield on certain parts of it, but don't necessarily worry too much about that, as you can use this little border cheese to just kind of go along the map edge here. And sure, it'll count down the timer every now and then when we get closer to certain areas, but you'll see that it'll just pretty much disappear at certain points. But even if you do want to ride it, this will help you get past all the enemies that could possibly potentially be there. And it just, you know, why risk it, right? When you have that kind of route available to you, that's the one that I always use. And yeah, then it's just kind of smooth sailing from here. We may run into some enemies, but it's, you know, it's not going to be the end of the world. We have very little distance to go for. So if someone starts engaging us here, we're pretty much already at the exfil site. So like, you can just come up over this berm here. Let's say there's an enemy right there that starts shooting. As long as I'm on the move pretty fast, we have these rocks for cover. We can race around here. You know, if you're shooting back, you can try to prioritize shooting guns out. That's what I always recommend. Shooting guns first and then taking out crew compartments. Just so that they can't fight back at you. The best strategy is just to kind of not engage people when farming resources. Now, obviously, you can't do that in every match. And if you do need to fight, there are certain ways to go about that. So like with the mule, when you have I recommend getting the armored variant. Sure, it carries 80 less resources, but it does get the benefit of having the ability to survive 40mm autocannons from the rear. Right? So anything that gets shot at you in the butt is not going to hurt you, and both of your autocannons, or both your little remote turrets, the 50 cal and the MG42, can shoot over the back of the vehicle, which allows you to engage the enemies more efficiently, and making it to where you're pretty much unkillable unless they push up towards you to shoot your crew out. So that's why I recommend getting the solid mule, as it can be very effective at dispatching enemies, not quickly, but efficiently enough to where you don't need to worry about your resources getting stolen. So once I did this and I unlocked all of this, it allowed me to unlock all the stuff that you see here in a matter of 2.5 days. That's because I didn't play the event for the first 2 days, and I just started like 2.5 days ago or 3 days ago roughly, and I've already unlocked all of this from the event. And you can do the exact same thing in the amount of time that we've been allocated if you just follow that strategy. Obviously, certain icons on the map, we went for, in this demonstration, we went for the metal, but you can go for the scrap metal, and all of these symbols here are what are icons on the maps. So if you do, I don't have the little metal blue box, but you just got to look for these icons on the maps in the large circles. And let's say if one of these circles or one of these icons that you are looking for is in the enemy spawn point, the second best thing to do is go to the boxes with the question marks, as those will give you a variety of resources, which will be better than nothing, right? If you predominantly need one more type of resource, like let's say, for example, like I do in these little scanners. So at the end of the day, I want you guys to remember and remind yourself that this is an event. This is supposed to be fun. And if you're not having fun, then I wouldn't recommend playing it, right? Because at the end of the day, there's no point in playing a game that you don't like. And with this event, sure, the profile icons are cool. Sure, everything in it is interesting, right? But it's nothing game-changing, nothing that's going to just define your War Thunder career. You know, and at the end of the day, it's just a game mode. So I want to remind you to maintain a positive mindset and to just go into this, because you are going to lose a lot of resources sometimes. Yes, your mule will get shot up. You may die when carrying over 100 of a specific resource, but the important thing is to not get upset when these things happen, because it's part of the game, right? So just go into each match when you have a full truck. Understand and just remind yourself that there is a high possibility that you may not extract with this. But once you start doing these routes over and over again and you find a solid path to take that you know how to run and you feel comfortable doing, you'll find that pretty much every match you're able to exfil like 1, 2, 3 times even with that efficient kind of path. And I showed you one that worked well for me, but you may have another route that works well for you right now, and I would recommend continue using whatever you're comfortable with. But as far as these upgrades go, these are not essential. This one may be beneficial if you're hunting down rage and not confident in your killing abilities. This one is nice to have as it makes it easier to farm resources, but they're not essential. Smokescreen is good in certain situations when trying to run or cover allies, but again, they're not essential for your gameplay or for the game mode. So just remind yourself that these again is just a game. It is meant to be fun, and if you're not having fun, don't take part in the event. You're not going to miss out on much if you don't. And with that said, I hope you guys found this video useful or informative. And if you did, make sure to leave a like or a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one.